So the Gospel this evening follows on from last week's Gospel, where Jesus fed the multitude in the wilderness with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Jesus then crossed over the Sea of Galilee by walking on the water, and now he's in the synagogue at Capernaum preaching his famous discourse on the bread of life. And in doing so, he reveals to all those in the synagogue his true identity as the Messiah. But he also reveals his divine origin. He's the Messiah come down from heaven. He's the Son of God. And not alone will he give us this new bread that lasts forever, he is the bread of life. And he gives us this great gift of himself in the Holy Eucharist, which he inaugurates on Holy Thursday night at the Last Supper. And like I said in my homily last week, many of his followers don't accept this teaching and walk away. And Jesus allows them to leave, because this mystery is absolutely central to our faith. The Holy Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. Everything flows from this great mystery, and everything in our faith is directed towards it. So let me return for a moment to that great miracle which prefigures the Eucharist, the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and fish. After Jesus feeds the multitude, he sends out the apostles to gather the scraps and fragments that were left over so that nothing gets wasted. And we read that they collected 12 basketfuls of the scraps left over. And this is a very significant detail highlighted by John in his Gospel. In the Old Testament, the 12 tribes of Israel were scattered and deported and enslaved. And so that unity was broken and shattered. And the Jews believed that when the Messiah came, he would reunite the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Jesus appoints 12 apostles as the beginning of his church. And he sends them out to gather the fragments that have been scattered on the hillside. And so the gathering of the fragments of bread is a sign that the fragmented tribes of Israel are being gathered into unity once again. And this points to Jesus as the one who is reuniting the people with himself as Lord and God. He has come to restore that shattered unity. And so Jesus sends out the church to gather and bring together all his scattered children, to bring them back into unity with him and his church. That's the mission of the church, to gather all the scattered sheep who have become separated through the influence of the world around us and through sin. And in the Mass we speak of receiving Jesus in Holy Communion. Being in communion means being united, being of one mind and heart. And this is why we should only receive the Holy Eucharist when we're in communion with the Church. And so when we fall away from that unity with Christ and his Church through sin and through rejecting what Christ and the Church teaches, we shouldn't receive the Holy Eucharist until we're in communion with Jesus again. And we do this through the sacrament of confession. And Jesus sends out his disciples, the bishops and priests that he has called to serve in his church, to gather his scattered and broken children and restore them to unity with himself and with each other. And so when we preach the faith of the church, it's not out of arrogance or in an effort to judge or condemn anyone. It's always out of love. It's calling those who have been scattered or have lost their way to come back to that communion and unity with Christ and his church. I know that some priests think they're being compassionate and understanding by preaching a lukewarm message, by condoning people in their sins, by telling them that it doesn't matter how you live your life or what you do. But this is a false compassion that only succeeds in leading souls further away from God. We're afraid that by calling people to a holier life, that we'll offend those who reject Christ's teaching. Archbishop Michael Neary stated in his homily last Sunday in Westport that people are afraid to voice public support for what is perceived as an unpopular opinion in secular society, because society turns on those who don't accept their values or moral beliefs. And so the Archbishop says that it requires great courage to uphold the contrary view. That's the call of every Christian, every follower of Jesus Christ, to be a sign of contradiction in a world which rejects Christ and his church. Our faith is counter-cultural. It's not based on popular opinion or on following the newest cultural or moral trend. It's founded on a person, the person of Jesus Christ, and he has called us to a life of holiness. And so as priests and bishops, we are called to go out and gather the scattered and lost sheep and lead them back into the safety of the fold of the church. In the Mass, just before the Lamb of God, the host is broken in two as a sign of Christ broken for us on the cross. But Christ offered up this sacrifice to draw us back into unity with God and each other. And even within ourselves we experience this brokenness. So many lives have been shattered through sickness, grief, loneliness and sin. There are parts of us which aren't united. Our passions are not united with our intellect and will. The flesh rebels against the Spirit, and we're pulled in all directions by the hurts and pains of the past which fragment us. But Jesus is the great restorer. He alone can heal the hurts and wounds of the past, and he alone can restore us to unity with God. And he does this through the sacraments of the Church, especially the Holy Eucharist, the source and summit of our Christian life. Let us now stand and profess our faith together.